Nobody saw this coming. Nobody. And I mean that literally. Because what happened at Talladega yesterday was not supposed to be possible. Not for him. Not yet. Maybe not ever, according to some people. But here we are. 0.111 seconds. Let that sit for a second. Because that number is going to follow Cleetus McFarland for a long, long time. And depending on how you look at it, it either represents the greatest moment of his life, or the single most devastating inch he has ever experienced. And honestly, it might be both at the exact same time. But here's the thing nobody is actually talking about. The margin is not even the most insane part of this story, not even close. So before we get into what happened on that final lap, and trust me, we are going to break it down second by second, you need to understand what was happening before any of this even started. Because the setup to this race is the reason the finish hit as hard as it did. First, Cleetus started 20th. Dead last area of the field. Weather wiped out qualifying, so they went by owner points, and that put him buried in the back with no favors, no easy lane, and no shortcuts. He had to earn every single position. Everyone. Second, Kyle Petty, one of the most recognized names in this sport, had basically gone on record saying, "Guys like Cleetus have no place on a racetrack. Don't come here if all you are is an internet sensation." That quote had been circulating everywhere. It was out there. Drivers knew it, fans knew it, Cleetus knew it. And then the green flag dropped. This is where it gets real. Because from position 20, most people were just hoping he would stay out of trouble. Maybe run decent. Maybe crack the top 15 if things fell right. That was the realistic expectation. That was the ceiling most people quietly had for him. He was in the top 10 before most people had even found their seats. Not fluking his way up there. Not riding around waiting for chaos to do the work. Moving. Actually moving through a Talladega field, which if you have never watched Superspeedway racing up close, is one of the most violent, unpredictable, constantly shifting environments in all of motorsport. Every mirror is full. Every move has consequences. One hesitation, and you go from 5th to 15th in under 2 seconds. And he looked calm doing it. By the competition break, Cleetus McFarland was running second. Second. At Talladega. In just his second ARCA start. The guy who was not supposed to be in these conversations was now directly in the middle of them. And the people who had been dismissing him were starting to get a little quiet. But that is not even the moment everyone is going to remember. The restart changed everything. His team had been walking him through the rules, explaining positioning, explaining what to do, what to look for. And when they asked if he was ready, Cleetus came back over the radio and said he loved nothing more than a good old drag race. Then he went out and proved it was not a joke. Side by side with Gio Ruggero, taking a push at exactly the right moment, surging forward, and then for the first time in his entire life at any level of ARCA competition, Cleetus McFarland was leading a race. And the crowd lost it. Carson Hocevar, who has been following this story closely, said it himself after. He said you should have heard the crowd when Cleetus took the lead, because it literally felt like the whole place was full. That is not a small thing to say about Talladega. That track holds over 100,000 people when it is packed. And the energy of that moment reached all of it. Over the radio, Cleetus said something that is going to get replayed forever. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am. I'm living the effing dream. There's no other way to put it. Thankful for all the people who support me. I'm fired up. I'm just like, this is awesome, brother. This is awesome. I wish Biff was here. DGA, baby. DGA." That, right there. That is why this story connects to people who have never watched a single lap of racing in their lives. Because it was not scripted. It was not polished. It was just a guy whose life had somehow turned into something he could not even fully process in real time, and the emotion just poured out. But here is where things take a turn. Because leading a superspeedway race is not the same as winning one. And Talladega has a very specific, very brutal way of reminding you of that difference. The lead changed. He lost it. He got it back. He lost it again. Restarts. Shoves. Lane switches. Near misses. The race kept throwing things at him and he kept responding. Not perfectly. Not like a 10-year veteran. But responding. And through all of it, George Siciliano, Squirrel McNutt, the guy who had been part of that whole shared YouTube energy that made this weekend so electric, got destroyed in a massive late race pileup. Gone. Done. 29th. And Cleetus did not even have time to process it, because Talladega does not pause for emotions. It just resets and comes back at you. So there they were. Final restart. One lap to decide everything. Cleetus lined up fourth. Not ideal, but close enough. The field shuffled in the first corner. Kimmel pushed. Others fell back. And then right when it looked like it might not happen, Cleetus found a run. A real one. Coming out of turn 4 with momentum, with a lane, with a legitimate shot at the win, 2 inches. That is what Carson Hocevar said after the race. He said Cleetus was probably about 2 inches from getting clear of Gus Dean, and if he had gotten clear, it was a home race. Over. Done. Win. But Cleetus and Gus got hooked together in that moment. Just a fraction of contact. Doors touching. And that tiny bit of drag was all Andy Izzo needed to come ripping around the outside and steal it. After the race, Cleetus did not make excuses. He did not point fingers. He sat there, and he broke it down honestly. At the end of the race, I think I needed to calm down and wait for my help. And I didn't do that. So I ended up making the move on my own. And that's probably why I finished second instead of winning. That is not a content creator talking. That is not someone playing a character. That is a driver doing a genuine post-race debrief on himself, identifying exactly where the race was lost and filing it away for next time. He also said something that tells you everything about where his head is at right now. He said the hardest part on a superspeedway is having the patience to wait for the guy behind you, and it is just so much chaos, and he is starting to get the car control down, so that is not so much of an issue, but probably just making decisions that do not suck. Funny line, but he means every word of it. The car control is real now. The confidence is real now. What is still developing the patience? The chess moves under pressure. The knowing when to wait and when to strike, that is the next layer. And the fact that he can identify that himself, after finishing second at Talladega by 0.111 seconds, that is genuinely alarming for the rest of this field. Carson Hocevar told him directly after the race, "You might actually win one. And I'm not just saying it for the camera. You might actually win. You're going to be fine at this. There's not a doubt in my mind." Jake Bowman, who races against these guys every week, said it was really surprising how good Cleetus was doing with very little experience. Said he definitely has car control, just needs more laps. Gio Ruggero, the guy he was racing side by side with on that restart, said Cleetus was making pretty good moves all race, but when he broke up the top lane, it caught him off guard. That last part is important. He caught an experienced superspeedway racer off guard. At Talladega. In his second start. Let that sink in for a second. And after all of this, when the helmet was off and the adrenaline was settling, Cleetus stood there and said, "Probably the coolest damn thing I've ever done in my life. I did it for Greg Biffle. It was absolutely amazing. And honestly, it was way easier being in the front than the back, which was nice to finally experience. And what an insane day of racing, because that was the greatest race I've ever been a part of in my life." Then he said, "Honestly, probably the most fun I've ever had with clothes on." Kyle Petty said he had no place on a racetrack. He led laps at Talladega. He nearly won. He finished second by 0.111 seconds. He understood exactly why he lost. He is going back to Nashville in the O'Reilly car with more experience, more confidence, and a very specific lesson burned into him about patience and positioning. Before Talladega, the conversation was about whether he belonged. After Talladega, the conversation has completely shifted toward how fast he can actually develop. That is not a small change. That is everything. So here is the question I want you to actually think about before you scroll away. Because this one matters. On that final lap, when Cleetus got hooked up with Gus, was that a mistake he made? Or was it something that happened to him? Because the answer changes the entire story. He said he should have waited for his help. He blames himself. But watch the replay. Watch it carefully. And then tell me in the comments, did Cleetus give away the Talladega win? Or did Talladega take it from him? Because honestly, I am not sure those are the same thing.